Hello everybody and welcome to Dee-licious. Today we're going to be making a Victoria sponge cake. Growing up, I learnt to make this cake as a child. My mum taught me, and it was always a Victoria sandwich cake. So I don't know which of those is correct, but I'm just going to assume that our way is correct, and I'm going to call it a Victoria sandwich cake. As the name suggests, it was first created in Queen Victoria's time and was, I believe, her favourite cake. It's very simple, like I said, and it's based off of a pound cake. So you have, in this case, I'm going to do ounces, but I'm also going to tell you in grams because I learned in ounces. So this is 8 ounces of butter, 8 ounces of sugar, and 8 ounces of flour, which is 225 grams of sugar, flour, and butter. You're also going to have 4 eggs, a teaspoon of baking powder, and also a teaspoon of vanilla essence. I'm going to be doing this the old-fashioned way today, and I'm going to be using a wooden spoon. But you can use a whisk, you can use a KitchenAid, you can use a mixer. Whatever you want to do, you do. You do you. So you're going to add, first of all, your butter. Also, I should probably mention at this point, bowl of soapy water in the sink and your oven on at 180 degrees centigrade, which is again about 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, you want to have soft-ish butter, but not so soft that when you put your beaten eggs in, you're going to have a trouble with it trying to curdle. It's a little bit difficult to find the right place, the right softness, but I find that if you just work it around in your bowl for a little while first before you add your sugar, you'll be better off. If your cake does, by the way, try to curdle when you add your egg, don't worry, don't freak out. There are things that you can do. It's not that big of a deal. You do not have to be absolutely perfect, and with practice you'll get better at it. Okay, so when you've worked that around the bowl for a little while, softened it up a little bit more, you're going to add your sugar. I'm using white sugar. You can use golden, you can use dark sugar. If you do use the dark sugar, it will alter the taste of your cake. It will have more taste. It will have a more sugar cane taste to it, a little almost treacle, if you understand what I mean. I'm going to use white. Most people use white because they like to have the light coloured cake. You're going to mix this in, and you want to mix it until it becomes, recipe books say light and fluffy, and to be fair, that's quite a good description. Right, so I've beaten this until I feel like it's appropriately light and fluffy. It's still going to be quite stiff. You want it to be quite stiff because you're going to be adding liquid. So if it's too runny at this point, it can become a bit of a problem with curdling. Now you're going to add eggs. You're going to want to crack them first into a bowl, like so. And then you're going to want to beat them just lightly with a fork, like so. And then you want to add that slowly. You don't want to chuck the whole thing out first. You're going to add about half. And then you're going to beat it in. Be careful because this bit can get particularly messy right at the start here because the butter and the sugar mixture is unwilling to mix too quickly. You're going to want to do this until you can't see any of the egg in the bowl. It should all become the light and fluffy again. It should go light and fluffy, and you shouldn't be able to see any residual egg yolk in the bowl or around the sides. And it will start, after a while of beating it, it will start to stiffen back up, and that's what you want. You want it to start to stiffen back up because it's adding structure to your cake so that when you add your flour later on, it doesn't just sink. It's going to have some structure to it. It'll be easier for it to rise. Okay, we add some more. If you're doing this with a child, this is the bit you're going to get lumped with. My cousin, there's quite a big gap between me and my cousin, 19 years. Whenever she wanted to bake a cake, this was the bit that I got saddled with. So you just have to do that 3 more times. Okay, so now that you've added all of your egg, if it starts to curdle, which mine did, just add a little bit of your flour. Normally a tablespoon will do. Now we're going to add the vanilla extract. I like a very vanilla mix, so I always use a whole teaspoon. That's preference. This is a standard cake, so whatever flavour you want, whatever topping you want to do, you just change your flavouring. So, for instance, if you were doing a lemon cake, you would add lemon essence. If you were doing coffee, you would add coffee. And then you just change what you're going to be sandwiching between the layers. This is your baking powder. This is a teaspoon of baking powder to my 8 ounce, which is 225 grams of self-raising flour. You just mix the baking powder in a bit like that. And then sieve. Okay. You might have the baking powder settle on top in granules, so it's quite important to push that through. Now, this part I was always taught to do with a metal spoon. You've sieved it. Sieve the flour so that it's aerated. And the last thing that you want to do now is flatten it by stirring too much. So you want to just stir until combined, and you do a figure of 8 with your spoon into the mixture like that. And this will help you to combine it without over mixing. If you're wondering who that was my sister directing on the other side of the camera. So you just want to stir it until it's just combined. It doesn't matter if you can still see a little bit of the white flour, you can in mine. It's more important that you don't mess about with it too much. You're going to need 2 8-inch cake tins. 8 ounce rather, cake tins for 2 cakes that you're going to be sandwiching between each other. Lots of people use greaseproof. My preference, as well as having a non-stick pan, is to coat with butter and then dust with flour. This one I've just coated with butter. I like to use butter because it's stiffer. If you use oil, it tends to try and slide off of a non-stick pan, and it's like herding cats. It's not good. It's not good. And then you just take any. I've got my self-raising flour out. You want to put about that much in, and then you want to gently bang it against your hand, and it will start to coat the butter. I find that this works much better to keep your cake from sticking than anything else. And then you want to take half of your mixture. Don't have to be precise, just eyeball it. Deciding when your cake is done can be a little bit tricky, particularly if you open it too early, then you're definitely going to have a flat cake. It's just what happens. So you're going to want to wait until it's got a golden, not brown, a golden crust. Usually they try to peak as well, which is also a sign that they're done. What I was always taught to do was, and just do it roughly, you don't have to get it absolutely perfectly the heat will melt it and spread it out a little more. What I was always taught to do was to open the oven, stick a hand in, and touch the top of the cake. If the cake dents, it's not cooked, and you shut the door immediately and get the fan going again. If it bounces back, then it's cooked and you can take it out. So that's that. They're going to go into the oven, 180 centigrade, 400 for anyone who's doing it in Fahrenheit. And look, if you have the ability, look through the glass at 10 minutes, but I wouldn't open it until 15 minutes. Okay, so these were in for probably about 17 minutes. I looked at them after 15, but they just needed a teeny bit more. Now they're out, you want to take get a cooling rack like this. I always fold a tea towel in half, and you just want to, they should have pulled away from the side of the tin. Mine have, as you can see. And just to make sure that they're completely free, you just want to tap like that, and they will start to pull away from the bottom of the tin. Okay. And should be perfect. And it is. Alright, so we're back. My cake has cooled, and I'm just about to show you how to layer it up. First of all, large plate, whatever you want to serve it on, cake stand. I like to just dust it with a little sugar, that way it doesn't want to stick too much. You want to put your first layer down. Traditionally, this cake would purely have had a layer of jam, the next layer of cake on top, and then dusted with icing sugar so that the top of it was white. Nowadays, people want a little bit more luxury than that. So nowadays you often get either buttercream or cream, whipped cream, in the middle as well. That's what I'm going to do today. It is rather delicious. But first of all, you're going to want to put your jam down. I'm using strawberry jam. I think most people use raspberry, however much really, your preference. You are king, you can decide exactly how much of what goes where. And on top of that, you're going to have your cream. Now, some people, like I said, like the buttercream. I find that's too sweet, and I feel whipped cream is just that little bit more luxurious. I've used about 400 milliliters of cream. You do have to have quite a lot of people to get rid of a cake of this size. You will eat it all yourself if you're alone in the house with it, let's put it that way. And on top of that, you're going to put your second layer. And just wiggle it about a little bit. There we go. And just for the last touch, sieve your icing sugar. And you don't need very much of this. It's purely decorative, but it does make it just look that tiny bit better. Really, really pretty. And there you have it, a Victoria sandwich cake.
Just didn't last, seemed so out of time.